What if I told you that people have gone to sleep, taken drugs, or have had an accident that has caused them to basically switch lives? Some people just wake up in a totally different life and they can spend several years to decades in that life. And then when they finally get adjusted to that new life, they then get sucked back to their original life. And then they are transported back to their original life where they were only gone for either a couple of seconds to several hours, and that is it. Today's mind-blowing story is of Steve Cantwell and his Salvia trip that took him into a whole new body, life, and identity for 8 years. Hello and welcome back, or welcome to my channel. If you don't know what's going on here, well, I'm certainly not going to tell you that the drones in New Jersey and Pennsylvania are nothing suspect at all, and the government's got nothing to do with it, and there's nothing to worry about at all. The government or aliens are not spying on anyone, not at all. But I am a horror artist and I like to draw what I talk about in these videos. Now I like scary facts, true crimes, anything to do with paranormal, aliens, all that kind of good stuff, and I like to draw, so I like to combine all of these into these videos to hopefully bring you a unique experience. Now if you want to support me in any way, shape or form, I do have a Redbubble store where you can purchase the prints from the drawings I do in these videos. I've been quite slack. I haven't uploaded for a very long time, but I'm hoping to get around to that soon. And also I have a Etsy store where I make felt toy patterns where you can download a pattern and you can make your own scary horror character from movies. I've got my own designs on there as well, so just head across there and have a look if you are a creative person. And also there is a sponsor of my channel and they are called Down to Ground. Now these things, you can sleep on these grounding mats, you can stand on them, and you can buy grounding sheets as well to put on your bed so you can be earthed and you can be getting all the benefits of standing out in the grass for 8 hours. Now this relieves inflammation in the body, it helps you sleep better, it reduces the amount of times you pee during the night, and what I have found is it is helping me recover from my strenuous exercises that I do. Now I was basically taking three to 4 days to recover from doing like my weight training and all that, but now I'm taking only 1 to 2 days and it's fabulous. Now these mats just plug straight into the wall socket, but it's not hooked up to electricity, so it's only using the grounding point of your home, so you will not get electrocuted at all. And the mat is really soft. Like I was very surprised, like I was worried it was going to be crunchy to sleep on and I was going to be able to feel this mat, but no, it is a really nice soft mat, surprisingly. Now in my research of trying to find a grounding mat, I found that Down to Ground were the only ones that would supply you with one of these socket testers to make sure that your house is grounded properly. So if it's not, then you can take the appropriate actions to get it grounded, because it really should be anyway. Now if you are interested, head across to Down to Ground. I have all the links in the description below, and with the code that I give you with the link, you will get 10% off your entire order. And if you find that doesn't work for you, send it back, get your money back. You can send it back if you're not happy with it. Now with that being said, let's finally get on with the video and let's get on with the drawing. Today's story is of a man named Steve Cantwell who decided to do a drug called Salvia, which knocked him out literally and transported him to another reality. Salvia, or Salvia divinorum, is a psychedelic drug that affects your senses, that alters the way you think, feel, and your sense of time. It causes hallucinations visually and audibly that don't necessarily exist. Salvia is from the mint family and causes highs that don't last long, but they are intense. Salvia leaves are either held under the tongue, dry leaves smoked, or drank as a tincture or tea. Once consumed, the drug can hit you in 15 to 60 seconds and last for roughly 15 minutes to an hour and a half. There has allegedly been no reported deaths from taking Salvia, but it's a risky drug because it alters your perception and emotions and impairs your judgment, so taking risks may lead to a potential death in the future. Plus, it is also an illegal drug. People who have done Salvia say it's a very, very unique experience. Now let's get on to the story of Steve Cantwell and what happened to him when he decided to take Salvia. Steve was a Mormon priest from Utah that went into a smoke shop one day to buy marijuana for him and his neighbor Carl to smoke when Carl got back from a stint in Iraq at Christmas. At this time in Steve's life, he was now living in Alaska in witness protection. Him and Carl wanted to try the synthetic marijuana, so while in the smoke shop, he overheard some kids in front of him ask for Salvia, so Steve thought that that was the synthetic marijuana, so once he was being served, he asked for the same thing. So then Christmas rolled around and Steve went next door to Carl with a huge bong and the salvia that he didn't know was salvia. Steve filled the bong with the leaves, he hit it and took a massive lungful and sucked that bad boy down to try and impress his mate that basically killed people for a living in the military. Steve said that it tasted like burnt tires, and then all of a sudden, a vortex opened up beneath him on the floor, like his molecules and the floor molecules didn't interact anymore, and it sucked him straight down, visualizing a swirling tube, and then another feeling of being lifted up, and then dumped out onto the deck of a small ski boat, and he was vomiting water. He saw 3 strangers standing in front of him, thanking their lucky stars that he was alive. Apparently, Steve was face down in the water, non-responsive, and these 3 people pulled him out and brought him back to life by smashing him on the back. Once Steve stopped coughing up water and was able to talk, he stared, laughing, and told these 3 strangers that he was from Alaska and he was in witness protection and he was tripping on salvia, and everything seemed so super real as Steve started tapping on his surroundings to see exactly how real it all was. These 3 people were extremely concerned about what he was saying, so they went back to land and took Steve to a nearby clinic to get him checked out. When he got to the clinic, he was told that he was in Tyler, Texas, and the 3 strangers were his friends since kindergarten. These friends were worried that he had suffered from brain damage from nearly drowning. The doctor said that he was probably suffering from temporary amnesia, gave him some oxygen, and said that his memories should start to return over time, like in a couple of days. Then his childhood friends that he didn't know took him back to his apartment that was not familiar to him, so Steve was taking the opportunity to snoop around in the apartment, just killing time until his salvia trip wore off. So Steve was still aware in this alternative reality that he had taken a hit of a drug that he thought was synthetic marijuana, and he was just waiting for it to wear off. So Steve sat down on the couch looking at yearbooks of himself in this new life, and after a while he went to sleep and woke up the next day to a loud knock at the door, still in the alternate reality. Paul, one of the men from the day before that was in the boat with him, was at the door looking for him because he hadn't turned up for work at the Peterson's apple orchard farm, where he was a supervisor for migrant labour. And Paul took him to work, but while Steve was just staring at his clipboard all day, he was still waiting for the salvia trip to wear off. After work, Paul invited Steve back to his place for dinner, but Steve just told him he wanted to go back to his apartment and wait for the trip to wear off, in which Paul was not really grasping what was going on with Steve still, because Steve commented on how Paul looked so real and appeared so real, and this rattled Paul, thinking that Steve still had some brain damage. That night, Steve went to bed and woke up again in the morning to Paul knocking at his door because he didn't turn up for work again. This went on and on for 8 long years, where Steve would just go to work, come home, cry his eyes out, and was starting to think that he had imagined his life in Alaska, not the other way around. He also stopped hanging out with his friends and didn't pick up his paycheck from his job until he completely ran out of money. Steve spent time trying to find his life and family in Alaska, but this came up flat as he just didn't exist as Steve Cantwell from that life. He even drove to Utah, where he was originally from, and the town was nothing like it was in his real life. His old high school was different and everything. It took 4 years for Steve to stop feeling sorry for himself. He accepted he had suffered brain damage, and he started participating in his new life in Tyler, Texas, for the next 4 years. His friends wanted to form a cover band, so he asked to be in it as well. Steve also stopped treating everyone like they were imaginary. Steve then spent the next 4 years living that life and enjoying and accepting it, until one day he was walking in a park with a bucket of chicken to meet his friends for lunch, when all of a sudden the ground beneath him opened up like a vortex again, and it swallowed him up once again. He woke up on the ground back in Alaska with his wife holding him because Steve had gone into a seizure from the Salvia hit. He remembers hearing his wife say to Carl, "Hang up, he's coming to." Carl hung up the phone and attended to Steve as well. Steve had pissed and shit himself while in the seizure as well. After he cleaned himself up, he joined his family for Christmas that he hadn't seen for 8 years, and it brought him to tears. He came to realize that he didn't want to be a Mormon preacher anymore, and it opened his mind up to so much possibilities on how life really is. Now, you are probably thinking that Steve's friend Carl and his wife would have been wondering where he had been for 8 years, but Steve had not been gone for 8 years in his real life. He had only been seizing for maybe 45 seconds to a minute. Physically, Steve had never left. He had only been gone spiritually or mentally, however you want to look at it. Steve said he was absolutely happy to be back in Alaska, and his life was so much better there than it was in Tyler, Texas, because of his wife, which is now ex-wife, and his kids. His wife at the time was mad with him for doing this on Christmas and scaring her half to death. Steve said he still thinks about what happened and has so many questions about what happened to him, and he really does doubt whether reality and time really exist as we have all been told to believe. He said it was all so real and nothing like a dream. It was really a reality he was living in another life. Steve thinks that he may have crossed into another dimension. Steve had connected with other people that had done Salvia as well, and he said that someone actually experienced being a coat of paint on a barn for 30 years after they smoked Salvia, and they felt every second of that 30 years being paint on a barn wall. A comedian that Steve knows said that he did Salvia and he lived in an underwater city for years. Could we really shift into an alternate version of ourselves when one version drowns and another seizes at the same time, which causes some sort of ripple in time and space, which allows two souls to switch for a time until the realities sort themselves out? Steve is currently a stand-up comedian and still thinks that his life is imaginary, that everything is imaginary, and it all could be a simulation. After his divorce, he lived on a boat in Hawaii for 10 years, working on his life and trying to find meaning to what this life is all about. He thinks that he was doubting his Mormon faith and that the drug gave him answers he needed, and also give him a long, hard 8-year look at himself to change his direction. This all could be possible as per Danny Goller's discovery of taking DMT to reveal the Matrix Code of Life. He found a way to access the hidden code of life through years of experiments and observations. This required getting roughly 180 people to also take DMT, shine a red laser at a wall in a cross-like shape, and get them to go close to the wall or surface that the laser was projecting on and look into the diffracted red laser. He would not tell them what they would see, but he got them to tell him what they could see, and all test subjects said the same thing. They saw a sophisticated matrix code, or COR, code of reality. Now, some might argue that the laser had something written in it, like a projector with code being projected on the surface, and also the fact that he is a filmmaker, so it all could be fabricated for views, but we really don't know. I do think that some drugs open the mind to other planes of existence for sure. Hence, why ancient cultures and shamans would do specific drugs to enhance their state of mind and see into the beyond and other realms. DMT is a short-reacting drug that only lasts for roughly 15 minutes, but it's also another intense drug that you smoke and you can plunge into a parallel universe and it feels like things are being downloaded to you like a message. People are coming out of DMT states all saying the same thing. They meet beings that are all described the same way. A college in London has found a way to keep the DMT high going for around an hour via drips so the volunteers can explore their DMT world more and what messages lie within. Ayahuasca is another drug that is taken usually in a ceremony of sorts to give you messages and help you heal from trauma in your life. It comes from South America and used by folk healers. Ayahuasca gives you a purge which requires you to either vomit or diarrhea, or even both, happening at the same time, so being near a toilet helps. People who first take ayahuasca can feel like they are going to die at first, but once they accept this feeling and move past it, they get their own personalized message given to them to work through. Ayahuasca is given by a highly trained shaman or shamans, and they are present throughout your whole experience, which can last anywhere from 3 to 8 hours, depending on the person or the amount of drug given. This drug can help anyone with anxiety, addictions, and traumatic pasts to heal completely. If you want to know more about ayahuasca, I have an old friend named Jared who started a YouTube channel called The Conscious Collaboration, and he goes right into extreme detail on the drug that he has done many times himself, and he assists in ceremonies in South America. They are fabulous videos, and that channel needs way more support than what it is getting. So if you're interested, head across there and watch Jared's videos and tell him that Becca sent you from Cutest Voodoo. So what do you think about the main story about Steve Cantwell? Now, this isn't the first story that I've heard of this happening, and I'm going to be bringing you more stories like these because it is just crazy what can happen to you. Now, the illustration that I decided to do for this video today was another one just in pen, and it is basically my vision that I got reading Steve's story, and it's just like this horrifying realization that you've gone into another reality, and it's just like totally spinning you out, and that's what I'm sort of creating with the vibe of this creature that I drew, is just like this complete horror and panic, and you're just sitting there going, what the hell, where am I, what's going on? Yeah, it just represents everything that I felt while reading this, and I really couldn't imagine going into an alternate reality and coping real well with that at all. So anyway, that is it from me. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. Dislike it, I couldn't give two shits what you do, because any interaction that you give me goes towards the algorithm for other people to find me. And if my videos upset you, good, because I do get a bit of a kick out of my videos upsetting people. And hopefully I see you guys in the next one. Bye.